Shan and those who've led. I'm just going to want to speak for just a few minutes on a theme that's sort of emerged really from the way the worship has gone as well. So it all feels very much sort of a piece. And I want to just talk for a few minutes about hiding. Now, so this passage that we're sort of in today, which I would encourage you to read through or listen to, maybe this afternoon, is if you haven't already, is all about hiding. David hiding, and often that can be fun, can't it? Hiding can be fun. Playing hide and seek. I wonder if you remember. Maybe I don't know how far back you have to think to the last time you played hide and seek. You may have played it as a more grown-up person. It was a feature for me as a teenager. It was a thing that we did from time to time in different contexts. In fact, I seem to remember doing it for at least one stag do as well, painting faces and hiding in undergrowth and that sort of thing. It can be fun, can't it? And indeed, there's parts of this passage read almost like sort of comedic moments. They read almost like fun moments. There's a little chunk in chapter 24 when, and you might be familiar with this bit, when David and all his men are hiding in a cave. And it must have been a thumping great cave, because it says this: "Now David and his men were sitting in the innermost parts of the cave. And the men of David said to him, 'Here is the day the Lord said to you, Behold, I will give your enemy to your hand, and you shall do to him what seems good to you.' Because Saul had come into the cave, to the sort of the mouth of the cave, because he needed to go to the toilet. And he'd come in, and David was there with all his men, and his men sort of chivied him along and said, 'This man's been hunting for you. Now's your moment.' And David crept up on him while Saul was doing what he needed to do, and David cut off the corner of his robe, and Saul didn't notice. And then Saul finished and walked out, and David sort of followed him a few steps afterwards, brandishing this bit of cloak to say, 'Ha! I was there, and I didn't kill you.' And you might read that story, and you might think that's faintly ridiculous, isn't it? No, of course he would have noticed if David got that close. Well, perhaps to prove the point, I asked the youth on the way in this morning. I gave them some pegs, and I asked them to place some pegs on some people. So you may find, if you feel the hem of your coat or around the sort of waistband or something, you may find that you've been pegged even this morning without noticing it. I saw that Roshan was before worship. I think I saw Paul was on the edge of his shirt as well. I enjoyed that. I've had 3 people try and get me, but I'm wise to it, I think. So you'll be finding those for the rest of the day. So hiding can be fun. Hiding can be a fun thing, but hiding is often actually something we do for other reasons as well, isn't it? Maybe we hide like David because we're scared. Because we're scared of a person or a situation, and so we hide. Maybe we hide because we're embarrassed or ashamed. You might remember the story of Adam and Eve, who ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, realized that they were naked, heard God coming, and hid because they were ashamed. You might hide because you're sad. Elijah hid because he was sad. He had his great mountaintop moment, and then it all got too much for him, and he went and he sat underneath a bush and said, "It's all too much for me. I'll die now." He hid because he was sad. So maybe that's been your experience. Maybe you hide because you're scared. Maybe you've hidden because you're embarrassed. Maybe you've hidden because you're sad. Maybe you hide for other reasons. You know what? Adults hide too, kids. It's not just something that we do. Maybe we don't hide physically. You don't hide behind the curtains or behind the sofa. But adults can still hide. Maybe you hide in your work, or you hide in a hobby, or you hide in a bottle, or you hide somewhere where you're making yourself inaccessible and you're holding people at arm's length. Maybe your hiding isn't even something you're doing voluntarily. Maybe it's something that you feel is sort of put on you. You just feel sort of invisible and unseen, people just pass you by. Hiding often is sort of speaks to something a bit more profound, perhaps, and a bit more negative. And it's in that context that I just wanted to look at some words from Psalm 139. which are probably familiar to many of us. Roshan's alluded to them already in the worship. So David was a man who was familiar with hiding. Across these 11 chapters, he hides. He comes back to hide a bit more in 2 Samuel when his son's out to get him as well. He knows about hiding. And he wrote these words. This is Psalm 139, which says this: "O Lord, you've searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as the day, for darkness is as light with you. For you formed my inward parts, you knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." David's a man who knows about hiding. He knows about hiding because he's scared. He knows about running away. He knows about all across the nations, the middle of caves. And here's a man that says, where can I flee from your presence? Where can I go that you're not? And he's not the only one. Hiding is not unique to David, as we've seen. It was also common to characters like Adam and Eve hid, Elijah hid, and Jesus himself was, he didn't hide, but he's on the other side of it. This experience of David that to be found, to be seen, to be known by God is something that we see also in the New Testament as well. Jesus, who is good at finding people who are hidden perhaps in their hypocrisy, like the rich young man, the Pharisees, Jesus finds them in that. Hidden in their sin, like the woman at the well, Jesus finds them in that. In their isolation, like Zacchaeus, or the woman with the issue of blood, Jesus finding them in that. And I just felt this morning that as we've been worshipping, as we've been looking at this passage, there's just something about being seen, about being known, about a God who sees your situation, from whom you can't hide, from whom you can't run. And I think that's good news. You might hear that and think that's a little bit like sort of Big Brother. That might be a bit scary, but I think it's good news. I think it's good news for 3 reasons, and I think we can see them in the passage here. I think it's good news because it means we don't have to pretend before God. If he sees us and he knows us, we don't have to pretend. We can be honest before him. Those verses there, you know my sitting down, my getting up, my thoughts before I have them. You know a word before it's even on my tongue. There's no sense in pretending, in giving a false picture of ourselves, because he knows, and we can be honest. I think it's good news because it reassures us that nothing that we do can take us beyond his reach. David says, if I go to the far side of the sea, if I go down to the depths, you're there. And that's true for us as well. It's true for us in physical locations. If I go to school, you're there. If I go to work, you're there. These places that don't feel safe, like the church building on a Sunday morning, but they feel scary. If I go into this situation, you know that God's there as well. And it's true, I think, in our sort of walk with him. If you've done a thing, you've behaved, you made some actions, or you've made mistakes, and you feel like, oh, God can't be here. He can't be where I am now. I've done too much. I've gone the wrong way. I think David's testimony reassures us that we can't do anything that takes us out of his presence, beyond his reach. And I think it's good news because it tells us that he's in control, that he formed us in the very secret places, that before even one of our days, as it says, your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when there was as yet none of them. It's good news because we don't have to pretend, we can be honest. It's good news because nothing we can do can take us beyond his reach. It's good news because he's in total control. We've considered that this morning. It's come out in our worship, hasn't it? In our prayers, in the things that we've sung and the things that others have sort of prayed over us. This sense that God is mighty, he's big, he's bigger than you, he's bigger than your problems, he's bigger than your sense of hiding, he's bigger than your sense of lostness. And I just felt this morning, it's really simple. I'm not going to go on much longer at all. Roshan's going to come up, we're going to worship a bit more. But I just felt that this was something for us this morning, that we can look to hide. We can look to hide ourselves. And I just felt this morning that it's just an encouragement that we are seen and known by a God who is in total control, who knit us together, who sees our situations, who is with us in them, is present in them. And so that liberates us. It's a liberating thing to be honest before him, to bring our whole selves before him, to know that we'll find him there. We'll find him in what feels like the darkest place. We'll find him in what feels like a challenging moment. He's there with us. That's his promise to you this morning. I just felt like there might be one or two here, maybe who that sort of particularly resonates with you, a particular sense. You know that you're hiding. You know that there's that expression, hiding in plain sight. And you're here, you're among your brothers and sisters. In a sense, you're sort of doing what you always do. You're putting on a good show, but you know you're hiding. You know you're trying to you're not giving up everything of yourself. And I just feel like the encouragement to you this morning is, I'm not suggesting that we all have to sort of bare our souls to one another, although I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think the encouragement from Scripture is that God sees your situation. That God knows the things that you're walking through. God knows the things that you're feeling, the things that you're wrestling with, the things that you don't think anybody else can understand. He knows and he understands. My favourite verse in all of Scripture is the end of Exodus 2, and it's we'll move on from that. He sees your situation and he knows about it. And I think as well for one or two, perhaps you're here and you're not choosing to hide. I just felt like that. Maybe for one or two, you feel hidden, but you feel ignored. It's not that you've set out to hide. It's not that you've done this thing consciously, but you just feel ignored in your context. You feel like wallpaper. You feel like cellophane. And just people walk on by. And I think just that was the other side. There's two things that came to me particularly as we were considering. And like Zacchaeus, who wanted to see Jesus, but he was a small man and there was a big crowd and he didn't know how to do it, and he climbed up into a tree. And Jesus is walking along and he's surrounded by crowds and they're shouting and there's loads of people. And he looks into the tree and he sees Zacchaeus. And he looks at him and he knows him by name and he says, "Come down, I'm coming to your house for tea tonight." And I feel if that's you this morning and you feel overlooked, you feel hidden and it's not your choice, your desire is to be known, but you just feel like there's just situations, life is passing you by. I just think there's an encouragement for you this morning that God sees into your situation. He knows you by name. He knows your situation and he wants to come, perhaps for the first time, to dwell with you, to come into your house for tea. That's his desire. He sees you there. And that feels of a peace with our worship. It feels of a peace with what I feel like God has been speaking to us this morning. So we're going to get back into it. Roshan's going to come back up. We've got some more songs. As we just reflect and respond to this encouragement, that we can be our whole selves before him. We can be our unvarnished selves before him because he's big enough for that. He knows it already. He knows it all already. There's no sense in putting up a pretense. Just as David hid but knew that God was with him wherever he went, so we in our situations can know that reassurance as well.